Alright, the final ride line for set 13 is here, being Shattered Glass, so let's begin. But first, a card of the day for Minerva, which is Freezing Magic Foros, which is a grade 2 with taking power on the skills. Count, if your Vanguard is Genesis, this is also Genesis, with the skill of Auto when placed on rearguard. If you have at least a grade 3 Vanguard Minerva, cost Soul Blast 2, choose 2 normal units from your drop zone with the same name without Sentinel, and if you choose 2, put 1 to hand, put the other to deck. Basically, Soul Blast 2, which will activate some abilities, to basically recycle a card along with another card back to the deck, which is very helpful, and the card input to your hand can be very important, especially if you're putting Angelica to the soul. I do see some decent use for this card. And now to the new sacrifice ride line. Here's the starter: Innocent Invitation Ralala Hokoko, in which we go to the grade 1 with gate power, Welcome Flower Case Hop Hop, which has the skill of Auto Vanguard. At the start of your ride phase, choose the grade 2 Dabucherry Feasting Sherry from your ride deck and ride as stand, and if you rode, you and your opponent both draw a card, but you cannot ride until the end of the turn. This is basically just free riding with an additional draw. And yeah, sure, your opponent also gets a draw from it as well, but the fact you still get benefit from it is not too bad. In which we go to the grade 2 with taking power, the Butchery Fristy Shifty, which has the skill Auto when rolled upon by one who governs ritual sacrifice glass. Cost Soul Blast 1, search your deck for up to 1 Sweet Bait, the order card, reveal it and put it to your hand, of course shuffle your deck. Obviously, that's going to be very important, but the second skill makes it even better, where Auto, when placed on rearguard, choose a face of grade 3 or greater Grand Dogma from your damage zone and put it to your hand. If you put a card to your hand, put a card from your hand to the damage zone. Basically, spoiler alert, Grand Dogma is going to be your second most important grade 3 alongside Sacrifice Glass, and one can't go without the other. So the fact that you can just recover from the damage zone is just very helpful. Especially, spoiler alert, you need more copies of her. In which we go to one who governs Ritual Sacrifice Glass, which is a grade 3 with taking power in the skills. Auto Vanguard, at the start of your main phase, you get this ability until the end turn. When your opponent's unit is retired from Guardian or Rear Guard, you energy charge 1. This could be very devastating considering the fact that your opponent is still guarding and that's gonna get retired after the guard step. So you're gonna get a lot of energy from this one skill. And remember, you get this skill, not the Vanguard. So meaning that if you quote unquote switch to a new Vanguard, which you will, you're still gonna get the energy charge from basically from this first ability. But anyway, second skill, Auto Vanguard. At the end of the battle, this unit attack costs Energy Blast 4, search your deck or hand or drop zone for 1 copy of Manifest Greater Being Grand Dogma, ride it as stand, and plus 15k, drive -2 during your turn. If you search your deck, of course shuffle it, and if you rode, your opponent may draw a card. Sure, benefit your opponent a little more while you're doing stuff. I don't like the benefiting your opponent a little more while you're doing stuff, but basically this is a multi-attack Vanguard that basically performs a superior ride from basically anywhere other than bind zone and damage zone. And there's going to be a point of this because of the next card, in which we go to Manifest Greater Being Grand Dogma, which is a grade 3 worth taking power in the skills. Auto, when bound by other than a card with the same card name as this unit, put this to the drop zone. aka when not bound by her own card ability, it goes to the drop, which can make some funny interaction, especially that you can superior ride from the drop zone, but you really actually don't want to do that. You want to keep her bound because it's going to be for the next few skills. Auto Vanguard, once per turn, at the end of this unit attack, choose one of your opponent's rear guards and retire it. If your bind zone has 1 or more copy of herself, choose another one and retire it. But if you have at least 2, stand this unit. So basically over time she gets stronger with Sacrifice Glass. So Sacrifice Glass attacks, superior ride this, and then this skill can activate on attack, and if you reach the full power limit, it can stand herself again. Only downside is that if you superior ride this with Sacrifice Glass, there's no drive checks even if you do the restand. Especially with the third skill, where Auto Vanguard, at the end of your turn, if your bind zone has 1 or less copies of this card, choose a Sacrifice Glass from your soul and ride it as stand. If you rode, bind this card. And that's how you build up the bind count with this. Basically, it's like a ticking time bomb, and basically by turn 4, at the end of the turn, you'll have your 2 copies of this card in your bind zone. Meaning that in turn 5 is when you can actually use this as full power. Overall, I kind of like the cool idea here, but it is a bit slow considering that, first off, the only way to bind herself is literally by herself. And by the time that you get 2 copies her bind, it's the end of your 4th turn, meaning that you have to really do it on the 5th turn. But I do kind of like the idea that it goes from Sacrifice Glass and then opening up his hat to reveal this card, which is actually pretty cool. But so far, it really just depends on the support because this itself isn't really that great. in which we go to the order card Sweet Bait, which is a grade 3 normal order and you play it by counterblasting 1. Perform one of the following abilities based on your Vanguard's name. So if it's Sacrifice Glass, your opponent gets this ability. All their rear guards and drop zone cards loses their count and auto abilities and cannot gain them and move them from rear guard to guardian until the end of turn. That's pretty cool right there. Basically negating a bunch of abilities, and I really love that because this is pretty unique. And then your opponent chooses 3 unit cards from the drop zone and call them to rear guard. Then for every 3 cards you and your opponent has for rear guards, draw a card. Basically, you build up your opponent's board so you can retire them, and when you retire them, thanks to your Sacrifice Glass, you're going to energy charge. And through additional means, you can also do more additional retire, which is more energy charge. And considering that your opponent's cards loses their abilities, meaning no resist, it's going to be easy to retire them. But the second section is that if you are in Grad Dogma, if your Vanguard was not placed during the ride phase this turn, activate Persona Ride, and then choose any number of cards with different grades other than heals or over triggers from the drop zone and return them to the deck and of course shuffle it. Basically, because of Grad Dogma, by the time you're kind of using this skill for Grad Dogma, you're going to be probably at turn 5. And by turn 5, you're going to be losing 2 copies of Grad Dogma, which is going to be at the bind zone. So this card acting like its own Persona Ride is actually pretty nice. Although there is a restriction where you have to not ride during the ride phase this turn, aka can't go back to Sacrifice Glass for triple attack Vanguard. But other than that, this is pretty good, especially for the Sacrifice Glass portion where it makes your opponent loses all their abilities. And recycling cards is pretty cool, especially when there's sentinels and triggers, other than heals and over triggers. And now to the additional support, we start off with Miasma River Beast Murdoria, which is a grade 1 with power, and the skill is Act Rearguard once per turn, costs Soul Blast 1, discard a card from your hand, choose a Sweet Bait from your drop zone, and it gets this ability into the end turn. Count, this card can be played from drop, and if you would be putting from drop after playing it, put it to the bottom deck instead. Basically, it's like the generic of set 2, where you can play the order card from the drop zone, except that one can search your deck and put it to the drop zone before playing it. But that one's auto and this one's act, so this one still will have some use. But I do recommend playing the other one as well. But the second skill is Auto Rearguard at the end of the turn, costs Energy Blast 5 to draw a card. Probably not really doing that despite all the energy charging you have in this deck. But at the end of the turn, it might actually be not too hard to do it, considering that you're going to be sniping quite a bit and every snipe gets you 1 energy. And that includes Retire from Guardian, which your opponent is going to do. But you mainly do it for the play order card. And finally, Eternal Musician Muji, which is grade 2 when taking power. This skill is Auto Front Rear Guard. When you're grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Sacrifice Glass attacks, choose one of your opponent's rear guards and retire it, which will basically give you an energy charge. And the second skill is Auto Rear Guard. When you're at least grade 3 Vanguard Grad Dogma attacks, this card gives us 10k power until the end of turn. Like I said, more additional retire, which is going to be very helpful, and also being a big beat stick when you're in Grad Dogma. Ideally, you're going to be using Sacrifice Glass to attack first, so this is not going to be hard to activate both skills, especially since the first skill requires your Vanguard to attack and the second skill requires your other Vanguard to attack. And finally, next week we got the first lyrical reveals for the next lyrical booster with Medio. So that's it for the new Sacrifice Glass ride line. What do you guys think of it? Other than the interesting way on switching between Vanguards and having a pretty cool concept, I have to say the deck is a bit slow, and it's due to the fact that it's going to take a bit of time for it to go to full power. And the other thing I kind of like is the constant energy charge by using Trickery on your opponent. But other than that, I have to say this deck is a bit slow. And now with all the new decks revealed, which one is your personal favorite and which one are you looking forward to? Dayusha is one of my favorites, but I'm probably not going to build the deck because no great Dayusha. But I might build Venus Lukier because I actually kind of like Venus Lukier. As for the other decks, it's just whatever other than Sutra. But other than that, that's it for this, and see y'all next time.